So CMP exam results and findings, they go sort of directly to the rating system. If an automated tool is misreading or misinterpreting exam results, how would you see that manifest in a rating decision, and what would you do on appeal with it?
Well, what you mostly end up with in those decisions is, if you sit down and actually read the underlying CMP exam report, what you will often find in those cases is that there are inconsistencies within the report. So it will say something in one place, it'll say something contradictory in another place.
Welcome to the Victory Over VA podcast, a podcast about empowering veterans to overcome denied disability claims. Each week, we deliver critical insights to help you understand the disability process, veterans' benefits, and how to take control of your legal rights. Now here's your host, Tony Francis Jackson.
Today, we're talking about a sad new problem, denial by automation.
Welcome to Victory Over VA. If you're a veteran struggling with the VA's disability system or just want to make sure you're getting the benefits you've earned, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit subscribe so that you never miss an update that could change your life. I'm Kristian Terison, here with renowned veterans disability attorney Francis Jackson of Jackson and MacNichol. Jack has dedicated his career to helping veterans like you win the benefits you deserve, recovering millions of dollars for thousands of heroes. This podcast isn't just for veterans navigating the system, though. It's for their families, their friends, and anyone else who wants to stand shoulder to shoulder with those who've served. So stick around, because we're here to make sure you get the support you need. All right, computerized denial.
Yeah, so the Veterans Administration, now the Department of Veterans Affairs, is a large bureaucracy, and it's struggling to digest a large mass of cases, especially since the implementation of the PACT Act a couple of years ago. So one of the ways the VA is trying to deal with that is by automation. We all hear about automation all the time. AI is a buzzword everywhere you turn. VA is not immune to that. They too have adopted automation. What they are trying to do is to find ways to move claims more quickly through the system. And for example, one of the things that they started out with was claims for DIC benefits, dependency and indemnity compensation benefits for widows and widowers of veterans who have died from their service-connected illnesses. So what they were able to do was they were able to take a subset of those claims where there was no dispute about the cause of death, there was no dispute that the veteran had been service-connected for 10 years or more prior to the death, and because that group of people is automatically entitled to benefits, they could move those through in an automated way very quickly and get them granted. The problem that you run into is that most VA claims are not that cut and dried. And the result is that trying to impose automation on a system where the facts are not neatly black and white is a problem. Computers do terribly with gray. They need everything to be either a 1 or 0. They don't do 1.5 or 0.05. So it's a mess.
So the VA, they had the Express 30 program, promising a decision within 30 days. Mm-hmm. While the time frame sounds great, what was the catch there?
Well, it's kind of what I was saying a minute ago. The problem is if it's complex, it won't fall neatly into the categories, and the VA won't be able to run it through automation. It's the classic old story about the round peg and the square hole. You may be able to drive a round peg into a square hole, but it won't go neatly. And so what happens is when things are complex and they don't fall neatly into defined categories, it is very difficult for computer systems to effectively work with them. Essentially, what happens in those situations is the claim gets arbitrarily put into either the black or the white, and nobody is really paying much attention to the gray. And so that's fine if it gets arbitrarily put into the white. If it gets arbitrarily put into the black and your claim is denied, that's not so fine. And there isn't any replacement for human judgment. We can teach AI, particularly the latest generation of AI with agentic AI components, to do lots of things. But they typically do them by breaking things down to a point where it fits neatly within some category, and then stacking up the processes that, okay, we fit it neatly in this category, now we got to go to this category, it fits neatly here, then we can move on to this one, and so on. It's very, very difficult to devise a computer system that can take many, many variables and neatly determine, okay, well, it's a little more probable that we should go this way than that we should go this way. Computers really don't work well in those kinds of settings, although, hats off to the computer folks who are increasingly able to create these multi-agent systems that are able to parse more complex systems. But all that aside, it's just difficult for computers.
Sure. Maybe quantum computing will save the VA.
Maybe.
But in the meantime, what types of claims are most vulnerable to automated misclassification or automated denial?
Well, I think really anything that's either medically complex or the relationship to service is factually complex. Either of those categories, I think those tend to be the ones that move off the track. So, if you have someone who served in the Middle East and stepped on an IED and they got half their foot blown off, the VA folks can see that, they can rate it. That's not a problem case. You could run that through automation and it'll come out right 99.999% of the time. But take the person who's in a Humvee that gets blown up by an IED. The guy in the front seat gets killed, his widow gets DIC, it's very clear, service-connected death, no problem. But what about the guy in the left side on the back who gets his head bounced off the window a couple of times and has a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, and gets, his time's almost up, he gets sent home a couple of weeks later, and, he's got headaches, and he can't really focus all that well, but, he's walking and talking, and most of the time makes sense. And, he bounces around for a couple of years. He tries this job and he can't do it. He tries that job and he can't do it. He maybe tries to get on Social Security disability and that gets turned down because they can't figure it out. And he goes to the VA and says, I've got a traumatic brain injury. And they say, well, it's been 2, 3, 4, 5 years since all this happened. You probably got hurt somewhere else if you got a traumatic brain injury. It's these kinds of levels of complexity that make it very hard for computers to do okay, this is black, this is white kind of sort that computers are best at.
Yeah. So when a decision is the result of an automated system, say for a veteran who's getting a denial letter, is there any appreciable difference, any way for the veteran to know, or is it all just...
No. The VA sends the same standard letter, whether it was a human being that processed it from end to end, or a computer that processed it from end to end, or some combination of the computer did this and the human did that. There's no way to tell.
So CMP exam results and findings, they go sort of directly to the rating system. If an automated tool is misreading or misinterpreting exam results, how would you see that manifest in a rating decision, and what would you do on appeal with it?
Well, what you mostly end up with in those settings is, if you sit down and actually read the underlying CMP exam report, what you will often find in those cases is that there are inconsistencies within the report. So it will say something in one place, it'll say something contradictory in another place, and the computer just, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, just reads the checked boxes. And if the checked boxes don't fit into the pattern it's supposed to recognize, then it kicks it out and says, no, we deny this one. So the more complicated or complex a claim is, the more likely it is that it will not be accepted by the automated systems.
I don't know how prevalent it is today, but the number of CMP exams I've seen where the examiner will miss the relevant checkbox, but put an excellent detailed comment in the comment box. I mean, I scarcely saw a CMP exam that didn't have some sort of error of that nature. You put
There's usually something. Yeah.
enough checkboxes in those 3 or 4 pages, you're bound to get those kinds of mistakes.
And what happens in those cases is the computer's reading the checkboxes. It's not reading the narrative. So if the narrative is favorable and the checkboxes are either omitted or unfavorable, odds are that it'll be a denial. And, it's a simple problem. The reality is that the VA has more claims than it has experienced staff to handle. And so they're trying to make up the difference with automation. And some claims literally never get to a true overview with a human being. Somebody will check to see if this box was checked, and if it wasn't, they'll send it to, step 3 for a review of why that box wasn't checked, kind of thing. But in terms of having a human being sit down, read the claims file, read the claim, figure out how it all goes together, that happens less and less with the current system. The way it's set up, VA employees get credit for doing a step in the process and then sending it on for the next step, so that it is not always that the same person carries the claim through from step 1 to step 57 and gets to the end and makes the decision. Often it gets bounced all over the place without anybody actually ever making a comprehensive review.
Gotcha. And a lot of the automation we're talking about here is more mechanical and, in a word, primitive than what some folks watching this podcast might envision. Again, it's not synthesizing the content of the text boxes, it's just looking at what boxes were checked and that kind of thing.
Yep.
But that said, the VA has proposed using AI assistance to evaluate, in particular, the question of the medical nexus for service connection. What would your biggest concerns be there?
Well, it's really just the same theme that we've already been talking about. The more attenuated the nexus is, the more complicated the steps are from A to Z, the less likely the computer is going to be able to figure it out effectively. If it's a simple 1-2, my example with the person who got the foot blown off, the boxes will probably be checked correctly and that claim will be bounced into the approved bunch. But, it's like my example of the poor guy with the TBI in the back corner of the Humvee. That's never going to get sorted out by automation. It's just not. You're going to have to get it to the point that you push the claim far enough that a human being has to sit down and read it all and figure it out.
Now, for us, we're typically dealing with claims at the BVA level. And so we know we're going in front of that veterans law judge to argue the facts of the case before a real live human being. But for that initial application, when automated systems are at play, what would be some documentation strategies or things that veterans could be doing to ensure that their claim has the best chance of surviving sort of automation?
Boy, that's a tough one because there are too many scenarios. But I guess the tip that I would give veterans is if you have concerns about the medical nexus, that is the medical connection between your current medical condition and what happened in service, which is where most claims failed, I would try to get an expert in medicine, in the particular area of medicine, to do a report, and not only to do a report, but to do what the VA calls a DBQ, or a Disability Benefits Questionnaire, because one of the automated systems that VA uses takes the DBQs and ranks certain findings in the DBQs, or the absence of certain findings in other cases, as the basis for first service connection and then rating percentage. So the more you can push things into a system that the VA's automation understands and can work with, the more likely you are to get a favorable result if it goes through the automated system.
Now, this is kind of an interesting open-ended question for you. There are few folks in the veterans disability sphere with your depth and breadth of experience. So where do you see, looking ahead 5 years, where do you see the AI and automation ending up for the VA? Is it going to be a net win for our veterans, or is it going to disadvantage them?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. I think that it is going to be a net win overall for veterans, because the more that VA can deploy AI, the more they're going to find quickly those simple cases where, it's obvious that A led to B led to C,
Streamline the grants.
and they can streamline the grants. What I don't think is ever going to happen is that they're ever going to have an AI system that is capable of replacing human analysis in the complex or complicated cases. So what I think is going to happen is, I think you're going to have more deployment of AI, and it's going to pick off the easy cases more quickly. I don't think that's going to help people with complex cases. In fact, if anything, it may push them down the queue, because people are trying to hurry through more of the easy cases to get their numbers up. That seems to be something that happens a lot in government. People want to get their numbers up, and so they find ways to maneuver the system to allow that.
Consequences of
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I do think it's going to be a net win for veterans. I think more people with clear, simple claims are going to get granted earlier. I don't think it's going to help people with complex claims, and it may even disadvantage them, but that remains to be seen.
So we won't be out of a job yet.
Not anytime soon.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Victory Over VA. Thank you for joining us today. Please be sure to like and subscribe so you join again next week.
We hope to see you then. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Victory Over VA podcast. Make sure to visit our website, veteransbenefits.com/podcast, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like this show, you might want to check out our free consultation to see how we can help you with your denied claim. Simply go to veteransbenefits.com and fill out the form. You fought for us. Now let us fight for you. And be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.